Hello everybody, welcome back to Monday, Learn with Flo time. I'm super excited. We're continuing to build on all of the different knowledge that I've thrown your guys' way over the last 4 weeks already, and I'm excited to just get more and more specific as we start to really set the stage for nutritional medicine. What is it? How is it different than traditional care? How is it even different than functional care? What is the use of things like proper nutrition and lifestyle as a form of frontline proactive prevention of hormonal imbalances or treatment of hormonal imbalances, and really just helping you guys live your best self. I want you guys to look and feel the way that you are working towards and point you towards the right resources to really make that happen, and kind of just, like I said, offer an opportunity to answer your questions and just real talk. There's a lot of confusing information out there, especially as we try to navigate things like diet culture and exercise, and I want this to just be a platform where you guys can come for real honest answers. As you guys have experimented with me over the last, like I said, 4 weeks or so as we've gone on this journey together, you know that if there's an opinion about something, I'll share mine. So if you guys, like I said, ever have any questions, that's exactly what the question boxes are for leading up to these times on Monday. So I try to make it something that's interactive and an opportunity for you guys to really drop your questions. So if you've been following along with my stories this last week, you know that we are really getting more and more specific in this journey of this hormone hierarchy, right? So I introduced this concept to you guys a couple weeks ago around this more systematic, put together look of how our health and hormones really operate together in a specific order of operations. We have a pyramid system. We have something to where there is a foundation, that a foundations first approach that we really want to start with. And if we continue to ignore that, like some of the more traditional or functional models do, we kind of hit a dead end and we don't get the symptom relief that we're looking for, or we can even make problems worse, right? So we really started to identify what are the 3 layers of the hormone hierarchy, the foundation of that being stress management. That goes back to what is the health of our overall adrenals, not just controllable stressors, or not just uncontrollable stressors, but controllable stressors as well. Things that we may not even be perceiving, right? I hear a lot of times individuals are like, oh yeah, I'm not stressed, but then we run labs and their body says everything but that, right? So we have to respect the fact that there are going to be internal metabolic stressors too, based off of what we eat, when we eat, how we eat, what we're not eating enough of, things like nutrient deficiencies, protein, fiber deficiencies, overall caloric deficiencies for our activity levels, improper sleeping patterns, caffeine use, alcohol use. There's so many different things that go into that controllable stress bucket. And we can't ignore the fact that just because we don't perceive an external stress, like we think about job and finances and lifestyle and relationship, of course, those are all going to be uncontrollable stressors. But the more uncontrollable stressors that we have, the smaller our capacity is to be able to handle controllable stressors. So this is exactly why I was just talking about it with one of my new patients this morning. This is exactly why we can't necessarily always just eat and move our body the same way that we used to, right? This is truly the change that our metabolism goes through kind of every decade. Might feel a little bit different. Honestly, every week, every month, every year of our life might feel a little bit different in terms of our stress bucket capacity, and we need to be able to understand and discern what is my stress bucket capacity right now? What can my body handle and not handle? Because our overall hormone health and our overall metabolic health is going to be the product of our overall stress barometer. I say this all the time to individuals. We can't always push to outsmart the body. Eventually the body is smarter than we are, and it's only going to be able to respond to whatever stress bucket we give it. So hormonal symptoms, disease states pop up when individuals are trying to outperform their stress bucket capacity. They have a stress bucket that is chronically overflowing, and that is where symptoms start. That is where disease starts to progress, is somebody has an overflowing stress bucket. Our job with nutritional and lifestyle medicine is to go back and understand what is that individual's stress load internally, externally. What is that person coming up against? Why is their stress bucket overflowing? And what can we take out of the stress bucket? Usually that goes into the controllable stressors, right? As much as I wish I could, I can't always change uncontrollable stressors about somebody's life. If I know they have a high stress job, or they know they have a high tension family situation, or they're caring for ill family members, or going through a time of grief or anything like that, like I can't always control those things, but what we can control is make sure that your nutrition and your lifestyle match your body's overall stress capacity right now, because that's the only way that you're going to look and feel the way that you want to look and feel, or just feel more resilient through those more stressful times. So that's what we're looking to build here. Stress resilient bodies. So we really dove into the foundation of this overall hormone hierarchy. So when I say stress management, I'm not just talking about obvious stressors. I'm not talking about this utopian society where everything is great and we have no stressors in our life. It's not realistic. Don't try to get there. You're not going to get there, right? You're going to actually probably stress yourself out more trying to micromanage things that you can't control. You can't control them. Life will ebb and flow with stress. It's about our response to it, and are we accidentally adding stressors on top and making it a worse metabolic situation, even with good intentions? So that's where we really got to opportunity last week to dive into these adrenal hormones, these adrenal glands that sit right on top of our kidneys. They secrete our stress hormones such as cortisol. So these adrenal glands, even though we think like, ooh, cortisol, it's a bad thing. It's like, no, cortisol is not a bad thing. Cortisol absolutely plays so many roles in anti-inflammation. It's our body's big energy generating hormone. It's so vital for immune health. There's so many in mental health too. So we don't want to just obliterate cortisol. It's a great thing. We just have to modulate how frequently and how much is our body really leaning on these overall hormonal pathways. So with the adrenals at the foundation of our overall hormone hierarchy, we have to be able to have a way to look within instead of just always thinking we're going to control controllable stressors. Yes, does it go back to things like breath work, meditation, journaling, things that activate our vagal tone? Of course it does. But even aside from those, I like to help people look within. What are some of those internal metabolic stressors that we may not even know that our body is dealing with on a daily basis, and how I might be making the situation worse based off of how I'm living my life, how I'm choosing to fuel or not fuel my body, what diets I'm on, what foods I'm eliminating, and the way that I'm moving my body and exercising, and my relationship to body image and food. All of those are internal metabolic stressors, and we have to respect those because those are things we can control. Those are things that we can work on and take off the table, and probably see better success when we're not trying to outsmart or overstress our metabolism as a means of forcing body composition change or hormone imbalances. So that's where I wanted to give you guys a little bit more of a platform today of taking this adrenal foundation and really even broadening the scope to all hormones, but understanding how do we look for these internal stressors? What are some of the different lab markers and lab tests that are going to correlate to giving us a really deep dive look into the state of that overall hormone hierarchy, not just the state of the adrenals, but understanding what is the impact, what's the widespread impact that if I have a shaky hormonal foundation, how is that showing up? How is that showing up in other body systems? How is that showing up in my thyroid? How is that showing up in my gut? How is that showing up in my liver detoxification? How is that showing up in my overall mental health or my sex hormone balance? So that's what I wanted to give you guys today, as a platform to be able to ask questions about your journey with lab testing, trying to find answers and kind of fill in the gaps with the different practitioners or avenues that you've been able to dive down, and really just give my 2 cents of how I operate, kind of in between this whole traditional and functional model, seeing the benefits of both sides, but also seeing the limitations of both sides of those models, and helping you guys navigate a world that gives you kind of the best of both. So to break it down, when it comes to overall lab testing, we kind of have, again, two different worlds. We have more of the traditional endocrinology model that functions as kind of a black and white spectrum. It's more of your either normal range or your disease state range. And it gives it almost like very black and white, to the point that it makes us believe that like one day our labs are normal and then one day we're in disease state. It really doesn't work like that. It's much more aligned with more of the functional endocrinology view of it, where we understand that there's going to be some gray area. You're going to have, for some lab values, an optimal lab value to where your body is eliciting a normal response for that particular hormone. Everything is peachy keen, you're in the green zone. But then there's not this stark line between like we're okay to we're not okay. It's a spectrum, right? It's a gray area. So even when it comes to some of the adrenal hormones like cortisol, or we look at this HPA axis, it's not just this cut and dry that the traditional model is looking at. It's like, oh, you're either normal or you have Cushing's disease, or you're normal or you have Addison's disease. Those are the two disease states of too high cortisol or too low cortisol. We understand that from a functional aspect, there is a gray area in the middle. We call it more of an adaptive cortisol response, where you may be outside of this optimally functioning range, but you're not in an overt disease state, right? You don't feel great. You don't look the way you want to look. You don't feel the way you want to feel, but according to standard medical practices, labs look normal, but you feel anything but. That's where we need to take a little bit more of a different approach and recognize that there's going to be these adaptive zones where you're outside of optimal. You're not in a disease state, but that doesn't mean we can't do anything about it. And it doesn't mean that it's not causing a problem where your cortisol or your adrenal hormones might be running a little too high or might be running a little bit too low. So more of that functional endocrinology model is what we like to look at. And there's lots of different lab parameters that we can apply this to, not just looking at specifically adrenal hormones, but really looking at all hormones. Where is that kind of adaptive zone, even from a thyroid standpoint? It's like, maybe not necessarily overt Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune condition of the thyroid hormone. It's like, but it could be in that gray area where we're starting to see some dysfunction. So when we look at the overall hormone hierarchy, it's super important that we have access to proper lab testing. And this is getting more and more common space now, to where, at least from a blood work standpoint, you can get more specific about labs that you want to request from a traditional doctor. There's more and more healthcare practitioners out there that are taking a bigger scope look at overall hormone balances, at least from a blood work standpoint. And then there's some practitioners out there that aren't, and they're still just very stuck in more of the insurance-based model, which doesn't cover a lot of the more preventative or proactive look at a lot of these hormonal panels. So it was a couple weeks ago now, I created you guys a free PDF resource guide that's housed on our Renew University platform. And it's a quick reference guide to comprehensive hormone testing. It's giving you all of the different markers that I look for when it comes to serum or blood testing. What does a true comprehensive hormone panel look like, right? So when we look at this overall hormone hierarchy, whether I suspect issues with the foundation and adrenal dysfunction, or I want to see how is the foundation and adrenal dysfunction impacting other parts of the metabolic pathways, I always want to take a look at all systems so that I can get a really good idea of not just individual numbers. This is not a put the blinders on, I'm looking at one specific number. You want to work with someone that's looking at relationships and is looking at ratios. So as an example here, we don't just look at an estrogen value, for example, in women. Estrogen tells us nothing as it stands. There's a huge range. 5 to 500 is going to be flagged as normal. We're not just looking at estrogen value. We need to look at what is the ratio of estrogen to progesterone at any given point of your cycle. How much FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, is being produced or is being needed for that particular level of estrogen, right? So there's ratios, there's relationships. I'm not just looking at your fasting glucose number. I want to look at how much insulin is your body producing to keep that fasting glucose number where it's at. I don't want to just look at your overall triglyceride number. I want to look at your triglyceride to HDL ratio to give me an idea of insulin sensitivity. There's so many different things that, from more of a functional viewpoint, you should be looking at. It's not just numbers at face value. It's not just this traditional reference range of like you're sick or you're well. It's more of a spectrum of like, there is going to be a gray area in which we can catch some dysfunction way earlier before it's overt prediabetes, before it's an overt autoimmune condition, before it's an overt disease state. And that's kind of the beauty of more of the proactive and preventative side of things. And where the hormonal testing, I think, is a big player in that game, because individuals usually start to feel symptomatic way, almost even decades before they would be diagnostically recognized in the traditional medical model as a candidate for any sort of intervention, which honestly is really sad. But at least we also know that there are resources out there of taking more of a proactive and preventative look if you know what markers to request, if you work with practitioners that understand it's not a game of just absolute numbers and like, well, everything looks great, see you again next year. It's a deep dive into looking at ratios. It's a deep dive to looking at relationships and kind of how are some of these numbers really working together. So, especially when we start to think about supporting the overall hormone hierarchy from a foundations first standpoint, we have to recognize that when it comes to this term stress management, and really our biggest stress hormone of cortisol, there are cortisol receptors on literally every cell of the body. So we can see dysfunction in adrenal health way early if we know what we're looking for. You're going to see disturbances in glycemic regulation. You're going to see disturbances in lipid profile. You're going to see disturbances in things like sex hormone balance. You're going to see even things around like gut health markers, blood pressure, even all the mental health type symptoms that people come in with, whether it's anxiety or it's depression. So there's so many different ways in which disturbances in this foundation of adrenal health manifest in all different parts of the hormone hierarchy. But I would say if we had to kind of boil it down to four, if I had to pick four main areas that I want you guys to walk away with today as the best places to look for diving into your hormone hierarchy, and specifically starting to look at what is the integrity, what is the strength of the foundation of my hormone hierarchy, I would probably boil it down to four main areas to start to look at. Number one, looking at glycemic variability. That is just a fancy way of saying looking at your blood sugar markers. All of the different blood sugar markers that traditional medicine would look at to diagnose someone as pre-diabetic or diabetic. Again, are we looking and expecting someone to be a full-blown type 2 diabetic? No. I'm looking for disturbances. I'm looking for ratios. I'm looking for trends. Are they headed that way? We can catch a lot of these things up to a decade before someone would overtly be pre-diabetic or insulin resistant if we're looking at the right markers. So category one, looking at glycemic variability, I would want to see things like a fasting glucose number, I would want to look at things like fasting insulin values. I'd want to look at things like your fasting triglyceride numbers. I would want to look at your triglyceride to HDL ratio. I would want to look at your hemoglobin A1C. These are all markers that are going to really tell me what is the foundation of that hormone hierarchy, how are my adrenals functioning, and being able to balance my blood sugar. If there's trends or disturbances here, you best bet that the whole hormone hierarchy is going to be shaky. And if it doesn't feel the repercussions yet, it will. So looking at number one, glycemic variability, and those key markers are going to be very, very helpful. Number two is going to be vitamin and mineral balance. Our adrenals are responsible for keeping blood volume, which is why blood pressure and adrenal function go so closely together, because our adrenals are responsible for water balance, mineral and electrolyte balance, and overall hydration. So if we have vitamin and mineral deficiencies, you will have adrenal dysfunction. Under times of chronic stress, our body depletes and runs through vitamins and minerals like crazy. Things like sodium, magnesium, potassium, vitamin C, all of your B vitamins, your immune vitamins like zinc. So these are going to be huge. If you have vitamin mineral deficiencies, this will definitely scream some shakiness in the foundation of our hormone hierarchy, and we want to address that first as a means of supporting all hormone balance going forward. Now, vitamin and mineral panels aren't really as effective of doing those in a blood panel or a serum panel, because we actually want those vitamins like tucked away. We have certain vitamins that are water soluble, but we have other vitamins that are more fat soluble. Minerals are stored in your tissue. So your best bet of doing that is doing something like our epigenetic testing, where we actually use a hair sample. That's going to give us more of a 90-day average of the status of your vitamin and mineral balance in your body. So doing the epigenetic testing outside of more of the blood testing is going to give us the best look at vitamin and mineral panels. If that's of interest to you, we're going to be running some Black Friday specials on that, so keep an eye out. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So panel number one, glycemic variability. Panel number two is going to be vitamin and mineral imbalances. Number three, which you can very much run as part of your blood work, as well as a full thyroid panel. This is a big one. If you have issues with cortisol or adrenal health, that will show up in your thyroid function. Now, it has nothing to do with your thyroid. Your thyroid is simply just responding what the stress of the adrenals is. So there's nothing specific, like I said, wrong with the thyroid. We want to still address the adrenals. But when I say full thyroid panel, you want to have a TSH value, you want to have a free T4 value, and you want to have a free T3 value. Bonus if they will throw on any of your thyroid antibodies, or even a reverse T3 is really helpful too if you know that you have a family history of some thyroid disease or Hashimoto's influence there. So most of the time people are like, oh yeah, I've had my thyroid tested, and it's like they show me a TSH value. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Or just a T4 value. It's like, again, doesn't mean anything to me. You want to see those relationships together. TSH, free T4, free T3, full thyroid panel. And then the very last one that I would definitely get run to is a full sex hormone panel, right? So I kind of alluded to this already, but when I say full sex hormone panel, it's not just an estradiol number. Again, what does that tell me? It doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me how is the body happy with that amount of estrogen? What is the relationship of progesterone to that estradiol number? Do we have an FSH number? Are we looking at testosterone? Are we looking at sex hormone binding globulin? There's so many other pieces of the puzzle besides just a number, and then being treated off of that number. We're not going to feel better by just treating a number. We feel better by treating a metabolic picture. We have to zoom out and put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, starting from a foundations first approach. So looking at these four main panels, although they don't sound like it, they're all giving you information on the integrity of your hormone hierarchy foundation. The glycemic variability panel, a vitamin and mineral panel, a full thyroid panel, and a full sex hormone panel are going to tell us a lot about your body's state of your adrenals, the state of your cortisol, and the state of your entire hormone hierarchy as it stands today. It is what it is, right? So I know it's not always like the conventional medicine way to go about it. And honestly, it's not even always the functional way to go about it. As the more and more that I've studied and masterminded with a lot of individuals, there's a lot of missing pieces of people getting the care from a foundations first approach. And that's where I'm really passionate about making sure that I'm a provider and a practitioner for you guys to go to that offers that kind of understanding. Complicated or overburdensome of things that you don't need. There's a lot of things out there that people bring me and I'm like, yeah, you don't need that. Yeah, you don't need that. Like, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of money. We haven't even done this first. We don't even know if we need that yet. So that's kind of a really big passion point of mine, is like, go in the right order of operation. Address things one step at a time, because otherwise you have no idea if you're just kind of like frivolously spinning your wheels or wasting precious time and resources around that. So if you guys have not had a chance to really get connected to a provider or a practitioner that's willing to run these hormonal lab testing panels for you, or willing to interpret them in a way that looks at more like ratios and relationships besides just a particular number, let us know. At Renew Institute, this is exactly what we do. You can give our office a call. You can get connected with a consult, full labs and a consult with myself. You can get a dual consult with myself and my practitioner partner, Dr. Lowski. So we can really dive in and get you guys a comprehensive look at everything that's going on under the hood and give you our professional opinion of what we would address and or proper order of operations of doing that as well. So you always have that opportunity for us, whether you're local or you're virtual. Please don't hesitate to click the link in my profile to either apply to work with me one-on-one, and I'll take you down that lab and consult route, or you can always give our office line a call as well. If doing some of this hormonal journey and hormonal lab testing, you're just kind of getting your feet wet, you're starting to educate yourself and kind of just see what's out there, keep on your radar, because I have my Revive, Restore, Renew You 3-month hormone transformation program that'll be launching in January. Pre-registration is going to be starting in the next couple weeks. So keep an eye out for that, because you guys, being my Learn with Low followees, will get some opportunities to sign up for my early bird waitlist, which will get you specific discount codes for that program. And I'm so pumped, because it's me just dumping my heart and soul into a full-on program to help more and more people, even outside of a one-on-one model, and get you guys the best results, feeling awesome heading into 2023 and beyond. So hopefully this breakdown of hormone testing 101 and walking away with kind of some of the 4 main areas that we want to look at, just being able to give our body a good sense of what does this overall hormone hierarchy look like for me under the hood? What is the state of the foundation of my hormone hierarchy? If the foundation of my hormone hierarchy is shaky at best, or there's lots of issues here, we know that there's a lot of things that are happening upstream, and we really want to address that foundations piece first. So if you guys need any support whatsoever, you know where to find me. Hit me up, like I said, on the link in my profile. Shoot me a DM. I'm very active in making sure that you guys have your questions answered and the support that you need. So check back next Monday, same time, same place, and we'll be diving into even more hormone balance education for you guys as we continue on our webinar series. So thanks for being here on a Monday. Enjoy the rest of your day.